translated into a graphic image, from a sketched, drafting type image into a graphic image, into this illusion. And I want to explain what the illusion is to you now. You're using the white paper to represent the invisible glass, or the reflective metal. Now, how do you get the white paper that's got nothing on it to stand up and look like it has shape?
Adding shadow.
That's right. And the shadow that you add, or the shapes that you make in the black on the white, need to be so specific that they alone define the volume of the white. Does that make sense to you? What do I mean when I say the volume of the white? Anybody?
The dimension of the...
Dimension.
The mass of the object.
The mass of the object. The 3D-ness. You're going to make white paper pop out. And you're going to do it by clever use of the black. But because it's a physical universe object, it has to be correct in its proportions and its placement, the way the details of the little black shapes fade out as they go around objects. So I'm going to show you some glass bottles, and we'll just talk about a few of them, okay? So that we can get, yes?
Do you have any metallic objects to show?
Yeah, there's a couple of metallic objects in there too, yeah. Okay. So is it sort of, clear to you what your goal is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is what we don't want to do. Okay. This is clip art. Nothing wrong with clip art. You can make a good living designing clip art. But as you can see, this line goes all the way around, right? It is clip art. It's not going to have the dynamic quality that your product is going to have. These are too rough. They're not specific enough to really tell us it's metal, that it's reflecting light. And we don't see the transparency of the light bulb here. So when you're worried about your work, just step back and look at it, or go to sleep and wake up and look at it in a fresh unit at a time, and ask yourself, is it looking like clip art? Okay. Clip art is sort of fast and dirty ways to communicate to people, So there's nothing wrong with it. It has a very good function in our society, but the goal of our project is to develop something much more refined than that. Okay. Now this obviously has gray tones in it, so it's not entirely fair. But I did want to point out to you how this shape, we're getting the highlights coming up the side. This is the kind of shape you want to be looking for. See that? And see where there's nothing in the white here? The paper there's no line there, right? All the way down here, we see that repeated. And we see the reflection here. It's a little bit jagged, it's a little bit rough, but it's a start for seeing what you're trying to do with the black and white. The kind of shapes. I just wanted you to see enough of these shapes. All right, let's see if I can enlarge that a little bit. All right. Actually had a guy who was, let's see, he's a senior this year. He did a corkscrew, but it was the kind with the wooden handle on the end. Right. And it took him a long time to figure this out. If you look at this and squint a little bit, then this line right here will disappear, right? If you squint at it for a second. Anywhere it's too soft, that's where you want to let the paper work for you as the white. It's these shapes in here, this coming here and around here, the way this shape curves up and goes around here, these little shapes in here, this is very important. These are the shapes that tell us what we need to know, and we can imagine all the rest. So you can imagine how important it is. See, when you did your first drawings last semester, and and you were working so hard to get all these planes placed correctly, if you were doing this object, you would have your plane for each one of these, because you want to get them all aligned correctly the way they are. So, so what are you going to do about the gray in here? See how we have this black here, and it's coming down in here. We've got the black strong black here and coming around here in the tip, so that's really easy to see. The really black blacks are really easy to find. What are we going to do about the gray? What are we going to do about this shape in here? Well, this is black enough. This might be a good place to go ahead and make this part of the shape black. Take this part of the shadow black. Perhaps a slight shape, or not a big heavy black shape, but just a little, I don't want to say line because I don't want you to think of it as a flat, straight, even line. It would be, you can create a line that's thick at one end and thin at the other, right? That's variegated in its movement, its density. So you can do a little something with that and imply where that gray is. You may decide, just go ahead and let this be white all the way across here, okay? Because you're going to be interpreting your object. You can't do it all just by painting only the blacks. You'll be looking at those first and getting those down, but then you're going to have to start interpreting it. That's where the cleverness and the creativity comes in, and the experimentation, trying out things. This is more like the one that Meg did. See, if you squint at that, how much of that is white. But when you get this little shape right here, that little upside down V, and then it goes across the edge there, that tells you so much about that metal and that shape coming around, spiraling around. Can you see on the top of each of those? And they aren't exactly the same on each one. The first two are very similar, but this one over here is different. This would be where you might think about bringing that V down a little further and defining that gray with a very fine line that turns around and comes back up. But you've got a lot of help here where, like, this very black shape here, this very black shape here, of course the big ones are obvious, right? I just brought this one so you can kind of look at the base of that, the metal on that. With squinting, now it's pretty easy to see where you've got white and black. Now it has a dark ground behind it, so you don't have the advantage of, on the right, the highlights just blending off into white. Okay, now we're looking at a bottle. Top left shoulder, squint at it. Back part almost disappears. The back left base part just about disappears. It has the squiggly stuff in the middle. If you look at the top of the mouthpiece, the blacks that come around the mouthpiece define the thickness of the glass. You can imagine wrapping your mouth around that, drinking from it, and sticking your tongue in it. You know, you can see how thick that glass is and how tiny that hole is, right? David, why are you laughing at me?
Oh, that's just me.
Okay. All right. I don't know why I threw this in. There were just a lot of bottles with highlights and shadows, I guess. But all right, here's another object. Is that a weird object or what? Can you see?
It's a weapon. It's a weapon.
It's a corkscrew thing. You take you stick here. You wrap your hand around it, stick your fingers in here, and there's your corkscrew. Pull it out. You know, you turn it around and pull it out. Okay. So you can see how these shapes, you know, tell us there's a whole ellipse here. Blown up this big, you really do lose these edges quite nicely.
That would have been cool. Might have picked his brass knuckles.
Okay. Here's one where, now obviously this is a dark glass, so some of you have dark glass, so you're going to really have to study that degrees of darkness to find where your blacks ought to be. Two things I wanted you to notice was the shape here and the very strong base, and in here. And then if you're going to do the writing, if you have a bottle with writing on it, you know, I've seen students trace out all the little letters so carefully. It looks like they spent hours on it. But really, if you squint at it, only put the little black shapes that you see in there. Okay? Especially, there's like indentions and stuff in the bottoms of bottles that have a variety of shapes. Okay, here's the rim. All right, now this is really where a lot of people mess up. See how the rim is up here on the right side? I wish this thing was lower so I could stand up close to it. Look at the inside, that black shape, the very inside dark shape. Then there's the white that comes around above it, and then you have your very heavy black shape, that one, okay? And then right coming around from the front is this one, right here, and underneath it, this one. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. And how they start and stop is really important. Like this one stops here, and then we've got highlight. The thickness of this changes as it comes around. You can look at it over here, too, and see a similar thing. A little different, light's different on this side. What students do that is making a mistake is when they just do it like a flat ledge all the way around. It's not a flat ledge. Can you see that? Great. Because I know if you can see it.
Hey, Marcia, is this a good example that maybe you could talk a little bit more about the gray? I'm not sure I quite
Okay.
follow how to do that.
Let me get to another one and I'll do it.
Okay.
All right? One that's a little bit not so tall. I think there's one.
What the hell is that thing?
Okay, this is the top of the bottle. And you can, as you can see from the blacks, it's very thick glass, right? Plus it has a ripply shape. Some of you have some objects with some ripply shapes in them. Don't be afraid to get in there and find what's in there.
These shapes. These shapes are straight.
Okay, we're looking down on these. All right, there we go. Can you see my arrow here? I might just sit here and draw with the arrow. Can you see the arrow?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, let's look at this black shape right here. It comes around the lip. It's very small. Then it comes down to a point, almost disappears, but touches the point of the beginning of this other thing. The edge of that going this way along that ellipse defines this whole ledge of the mouthpiece, this whole section of the mouthpiece. Notice how this goes around this ellipse. Come down here, this shadow goes around the ellipse. So, just as this one does, but it discontinues. You might even have it solid white across here and where this gray is right here. Or you might create a gray shape just by making a very thin line that starts here